What is a revolution? A revolution is a fundamental and often sudden change in political, social, or economic structures within a society. It is characterized by a significant and transformative shift in the way a society is organized, often involving the overthrow or replacement of an existing government or ruling authority. Revolutionary movements can take various forms, and they may be driven by a range of factors, including political discontent, social inequality, economic hardship, cultural shifts, or a desire for independence. Revolutions can result in the establishment of new political systems, the restructuring of social hierarchies, or the implementation of new economic policies. Key features of a revolution might include the overthrow or transformation, where revolutions typically involve the overthrow of established authorities or a profound transformation of existing political, social, or economic structures. They might include mass mobilization. Revolutions often require the support and active participation of a significant portion of the population. Mass mobilization through protests, uprisings, and other forms of collective action is a common feature. There's ideological change. Many revolutions are driven by ideological motivations. The population may rally around ideas such as democracy, liberty, equality, or a national independence as they seek to reshape their society for what they perceive to be the better. There is conflict and struggle. Revolutions are frequently accompanied by periods of conflict and struggle, both between the revolutionary forces and existing authorities and among other different factions within the revolutionary movement. Lastly, there are social and institutional reorganization. Successful revolutions lead to the reorganization of social and institutional structures. This may involve the drafting of new constitutions, the establishment of new political institutions, or the redistribution of resources. So, historically, revolutions have played a significant role in shaping the course of nations and influencing global developments. Whereas perhaps the American Revolution, which is not really a revolution, more of a war of independence, whereas the American Revolution is seen as being the beginning of the revolutionary age, the one which is perhaps the most transformative and is a legitimate revolution by the criteria we just went through is the French Revolution of 1789. In the last video we did, we talked about the life of Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who, perhaps more than anyone else, benefited directly from the French Revolution. So why don't we next cover what is the French Revolution? Why did it happen? What happened? And yeah, let's just dive into it. The French Revolution, now sometimes referred to as the First French Revolution because many came afterwards.
It is said that the people are revolting.
You said it. They stink on ice.
Unfolded from 1789 to 1799 and was a pivotal and tumultuous period in French history that reshaped not only the political landscape of the nation, but also had profound repercussions across Europe and indeed the wider world. The revolution marked the end of the absolute monarchy or the ancien regime, the rise of radical political ideologies, and the transformation of French society. So what caused the French Revolution? Well, this is one which has been deliberated plenty. There is no one direct cause, but rather a collection of many different causes. There was economic hardship among France. Centuries of war had finally taken its toll on the French country, and the people were starting to feel some of the effects. France was, of course, one of the most powerful and richest nations on earth during this time, so to experience sudden economic hardship was quite difficult for the people, and indeed the state to take. In fact, there is another contributing factor which contributed to France becoming poorer, and that's that France was funding the United States, or the 13 colonies, during the War of Independence against Britain, simply because France didn't like Britain very much, and who can really blame them? So that is one of the other main contributing factors which caused the French Revolution. It's important to note that France at this time, or rather the people of France, was split into three different estates, as they were called, or you could say social class, I guess. And the three estates all contributed to the French Revolution differently, they were all affected differently, and we should perhaps run through them to understand better what actually happened in the French Revolution and what caused it. So there is the First Estate. The First Estate is the clergy of France. So the First Estate comprised the clergy of the Roman Catholic Church, the primary religion in France at this time, and still today, I believe. It held significant power and wealth. However, the clergy's exemption from many taxes and their ownership of vast lands and resources led to resentment among the common people. And it's very important to note that during this time, France was the main contributor towards the Enlightenment era. Enlightenment thinkers such as Rousseau and Voltaire were more more prominently than before criticizing these aspects of life, not just in France, but in Europe and the wider world. People were, for the first time, questioning authority. So people were beginning to resent the First Estate as a side effect of this. So the clergy's resistance to taxation reforms and the reluctance of some members to embrace Enlightenment ideals contributed to this overall discontent. And the call for the Estates General in 1789, which was a meeting of representatives from all three estates, was a response to the financial crisis. And the clergy's stance in this process helped set the stage for revolutionary events. Then we have the Second Estate, which was comprised of the nobility of France. Much like the clergy, who we just mentioned, the nobility held immense privileges, including exemption from many taxes. They also resisted attempts at reform that aimed to redistribute the tax burden more equitably. So the financial crisis at the French estate, coupled with the resistance of the nobility to taxation, led to a deadlock, and the king at the time, Louis XVI, more on this guy later, attempted to reform the taxation system but faced opposition from the nobility. And this impasse contributed to the convening of the Estates General, which ultimately led to the formation of the National Assembly and the revolutionary events that were to follow and be very drastic for some of the nobility. We'll come to them later too. And then lastly, we have the Third Estate, or the commoners. This estate bore the brunt of the taxation system and faced economic hardships. The bourgeoisie, influenced by Enlightenment ideas, played a crucial role in driving the revolutionary spirit. So the Third Estate is comprised of the commoners. The commoners were paying the tax burden. So rather than even trickle down, they were trickling up, and I don't know how this is sustainable. Anyway, the Third Estate, particularly the bourgeoisie, demanded political representation and an end to the feudal privileges of the clergy and nobility. The formation of the National Assembly by the representatives of the Third Estate marked a significant turning point, and this would eventually lead to the storming of Bastille on July the 14th, 1789 by the commoners, and this symbolized a popular uprising against the monarchy and the beginning of radical changes, which would of course culminate in the French Revolution. So now that we understand the three estates and what they were and what their contributing roles were in the French Revolution, we can dive into a man called Maximilien Robespierre. Maximilien Robespierre was a prominent figure in the French Revolution and a key architect of the radical phase known as the Reign of Terror. Again, more on this later. There's so much to cover, people. Keep up. Born on May 6, 1758, Robespierre became a leading member of the Committee of Public Safety, a powerful and authoritarian governing body during the French Revolution. Robespierre's influence on the French Revolution can be understood through several key points. Number one being the role in the National Convention. Robespierre was elected as a deputy to the National Convention, the revolutionary government that came into existence after the abolition of the monarchy in 1792. So the abolition of the monarchy in 1792, well, let's just say things didn't end too well for King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. He represented the radical Jacobin faction and was known for his powerful oratory skills and commitment to republican ideals. Number two is advocacy for virtue and republicanism. So Robespierre was a fervent advocate for the principle of virtue, equality, and republicanism. Not republicanism like the American Republicans. No, don't think that, my friends. He believed in creating a virtuous society by eradicating elements perceived as counter-revolutionary. This led to the promotion of de-Christianization policies and the establishment of a new civic religion known as the cult of supreme being. So, as you can probably read by this, Robespierre was an advocate for the Enlightenment era. He grew up during the Enlightenment and he embodied, perhaps better than anyone at this time, the Enlightenment. But he does go a little bit off track at some point. We'll get to that in just a sec. Number three is the leadership in the Committee of Public Safety. Robespierre played a pivotal role in the Committee of Public Safety, which was tasked with ensuring the survival of the revolutionary government during a time of internal and external threats. His influence and power within the committee increased over time, and he became a dominant figure in the revolutionary leadership. And this would lead to number four, which is the Reign of Terror. Robespierre's most infamous contribution to the revolution was his role in the Reign of Terror, a period from 1793 to 1794 marked by mass executions of perceived enemies of the revolution. The Committee of Public Safety, under Robespierre's leadership, engaged in a campaign of political purges, and thousands of people, including our good friends King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, were executed by the guillotine. And then number five, we have the cult of the supreme being and de-Christianization. In an effort to create a more secular and civic society built on the ideals of the Enlightenment, Robespierre played a central role in promoting the cult of supreme being. This involved ceremonies and festivals celebrating reason and virtue. Simultaneously, he supported policies aimed at de-Christianizing France, viewing organized religion as a potential source of counter-revolutionary sentiment. And then number six was his downfall and eventual execution. Robespierre's influence reached its zenith during the Reign of Terror, but it eventually led to his downfall. Amid concerns about the excesses of the terror and fears of his growing power, Robespierre and his associates were arrested in July 1793 1794. The Thermidorian reaction, a counter-revolutionary movement, resulted in Robespierre's trial and execution on July 28, 1794. So the great irony of Robespierre is that he was, perhaps more than anyone, the key instigator of the revolution. He led the revolution during its most chaotic and turbulent time, and then, ironically, the revolution would consume him too. So, Robespierre's legacy is complex. While he was an important figure in the early stages of the revolution and advocated for certain democratic principles, his role in the Reign of Terror has been widely criticized for the extreme and brutal measures taken to ensure the revolution's survival. And yeah, this would pave the way for Napoleon Bonaparte to eventually take over the reins of France in 1799. You know, the revolution faced internal conflicts and external threats at this point, but Napoleon, a military general insanely popular due to the successes of the Italian campaign, would seize power in the coup of the 18 Brumaire in 1799, effectively ending the revolutionary era and bringing in the new era, named after Napoleon, the Napoleonic era. So yeah, the French Revolution had a profound impact on France and the world. It paved the way for the rise of modern political ideologies. You know, socialism can be traced back to this time, as can libertarianism. So yeah, democracy, nationalism, they all came, well, democracy came much earlier, in fact, but you know what I mean. Democracy was brought back in during this time, you know, it was a new era for democracy. Way. The Napoleonic era, which followed the revolution, spread these revolutionary ideals across Europe through conquest. The revolution also led to social and cultural changes, challenging traditional hierarchies, such as the regimes, the ancien regimes of Europe at this time, the absolute monarchies, etc., and inspired subsequent movements for civil rights and social justice in the following centuries. However, the revolution's radical phase, the Reign of Terror, raised questions about the balance between liberty and order. The legacy of the French Revolution continues to be a subject of historical debate to this day. It's one of the most written about subjects in history, and scholars continue to analyze its successes, failures, and enduring impact on political and social structures. So there you have it. There's the French Revolution in about 10 minutes or so, maybe 11 minutes perhaps. It's a topic which needs to be analyzed for far greater than this amount of time. You know, you can't do a subject like this justice in just 10 minutes, but we best tried to explain it. And we didn't even really touch on Louis XVI for Marie Antoinette, which is kind of crazy to think about. So yeah, that's the French Revolution. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. I am begging you, please hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Collective Histories page. And you can follow us on Instagram at instagram.com/The Collective Histories. And you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/Collective History. I'll type it in. Anyway, have a good day, everyone. Goodbye. Dun, 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 dun.